Hey y'all, I'm Anna and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another Fall Food Friday. This video is in collaboration with Fallon from Moss Family TV. Be sure to check out the playlist, I'll have it linked below. Today I'm going to teach you how to make two fall breads. One of them is a pumpkin bread and the second one is an apple bread. And I make both of these every single year. They are family favorites. You are going to love them, so let's get started. Okay y'all, let's go ahead and get started on making this delicious pumpkin bread. What I have here are two loaf pans. They're the exact same size. I think it's an 8x4. I also have two little strips of parchment paper. Now I'm super OCD, so every time I make pumpkin bread or banana bread or anything like that, I always spray the pan itself. Then I put down the parchment paper. And I spray it one more time. That's ready to go. I also have the oven preheating to 325. I will have the recipe linked down below for you with all of the measurements, but I'm going to start off with 1.5 sticks of unsalted butter that's been softened, and 2 cups of sugar, and I'll let this cream together for several minutes until it's light and fluffy. Alright, that looks nice and creamy, so now I'm going to add in 2 eggs, and I'm also going to add a splash of vanilla. The recipe does not call for vanilla, but I always like to add in about a teaspoon. Alright, that looks great. I'm just going to unlock this really quickly and just scrape the sides down to make sure nothing is stuck on the side or at the bottom. Oop, the oven's preheated. Next, we're going to add in 1 can of pure pumpkin puree. And now we'll let this mix for about 30 seconds. Alright, that looks good, and don't be alarmed if it looks a little bit curdled, that's totally normal. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and to that we're going to add in some salt, baking powder, baking soda, cinnamon, clove, and nutmeg, and the recipe will have all of the measurements. Now I'm going to mix this on low just until it's combined. That looks wonderful. I'm just going to give it one last little scrape. You can see that there's some bits of butter kind of at the bottom that didn't get fully mixed in, so I'll turn this back on for another 10 seconds or so. Okay, now it's time to pour the batter into the loaf pans. Now on a normal day, I would take out my scale and weigh them to make sure they're even, but I ain't got time for that today. I just do not feel like it at all, so I'm just going to eyeball it. It is not going to be a big deal if one has a little bit more than the other. I'll just do my best to make them even. This pumpkin bread is something that I make every single fall, several times, and my family just loves it. And since one batch makes 2 loaves, I always end up giving one away, and I think I'm going to take one of these to my neighbors across the street. Hi Jenny, if you're watching. One of these is going to be for you, and I hope that you all love it. Okay, it's time to go ahead and put these in the oven at 325. Let me see here, I've got my recipe. It says that it needs to bake for 65 to 75 minutes. And when they're all done, we'll let them cool in the pans for about 10 minutes before we turn them over onto a wire rack. So, in they go. My pumpkin bread came out of the oven about 45 minutes ago, and it baked for exactly 1 hour. And I let them cool for 10 minutes in the loaf pans, and then I inverted them on top of this wire rack. You can kind of see the little marks from it, but that's totally fine. So now I'm going to dig in. I'm gonna leave one alone for my neighbor and cut one up for you to see, and I'm so excited. It is absolutely perfect. It is moist and soft in the middle. Oh, I can't wait to dig in. It is pure pumpkin heaven. Your family will love this. If you like anything pumpkin, you'll love the spread. It's time to get started with our apple bread. Now this recipe only makes one loaf, and it is a Laura Vitale recipe, so I've got this printed off and sitting right here next to me. There are a couple of things on here that I'm going to omit, but let me kind of go over the ingredients with you. We have some all-purpose flour, 4 apples, and in just a second I'm going to peel them and shred them up like with my cheese grater. We're going to need some vegetable oil, sugar, salt, cinnamon, and baking powder, 2 eggs. I've already measured out those 3 things, by the way. Some milk and vanilla. And then for the topping, I'm about to put this in the fridge because I want that butter to stay cold, but it's some butter, unsalted, flour, brown sugar, and a pinch of salt. I already have my oven preheating to 350, and I prepared this loaf pan just like I did with my pumpkin bread, and I used this Pam baking spray, the Perfect Release. I love this stuff. It works really, really well. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and peel and grate up my apples, and then we will get started on making the batter. I am so glad that this recipe only calls for 4 apples. If you saw my video from last Friday, when I made apple butter, I peeled like at least 12 or 14 apples, and it took like 20 minutes. So super glad this is not going to take me long. I have all of my apples shredded and ready to go, so I'm going to set those aside. Now, the recipe calls for some cranberries, dried cranberries, and also some orange zest. Now, I would always omit the orange zest just because it's not my favorite thing to add to stuff like this. But if I had the dried cranberries, I do think I would add some in. I just don't have any. In my large bowl, I'm going to add my sugar, a 1/4 cup of milk, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, and 2 eggs, along with a splash of vanilla. I'll just whisk these ingredients together really well until it's nice and combined. That looks good, and now we'll add in the shredded apple. I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and to that I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And finally, we'll add the dry ingredients into the apple mixture. Now, the recipe technically says to do this like the other way around, to add the wet to the dry, but I had all of my wet ingredients in the big bowl. So, you know, I just did it this way. And now I'll just be very gentle and stir all of this together just until it's nice and incorporated. And then we will be ready to pour it in our loaf pan. Okay, that looks great and it smells even better. I seriously would eat this raw if I didn't think it would make me sick. Now it's time to add the batter into the loaf pan, and once I get this all in here, we will work on the streusel topping. I have that sitting in the fridge just so it stays nice and cold. Normally I would add like a 1/4 cup of chopped pecans or walnuts to this, but I don't have any nuts on hand right now. I'm just going to use my clean hands to mix it all together. I'll pinch the butter in my fingers like this until it gets to be about that size all throughout. Now it's time to add the streusel topping all over the top of the bread. This is ready to go in the oven now at 350 for about an hour, and when it's finished, I will show you what it looks like. My apple bread baked for about an hour and 5 minutes, and it looks perfect. It's been cooling over there for about 15 minutes now. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take a knife and run it around the edges and invert it onto my wire rack. The reason I put some parchment paper under here is because the bottom is real sticky, which is a good thing, but I don't want it to stick to the wire rack. So I just put some parchment paper there just to keep that from happening. It is still very hot, but I'm gonna let it cool a little bit longer before I slice it. Okay, my pumpkin bread has been cooling for about an hour or so. My mom and I just went to lunch and we just got back home and we are ready for dessert. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut into this bad boy. Okay, this is so good. I love the fact that it's not too sweet, believe it or not, because there is a whole cup of sugar in here, but it's like the perfect amount of sweetness. You could eat this as a dessert or as a breakfast, and I think your family will love it. I know my mom is happy, aren't you, Mom?
I am. I just need some coffee.
Yeah, we need some coffee now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you decide to make either one of these fall breads, please let me know down in the comments. And I will see you all soon. Bye.